Today we're going to talk some more about which items have Kedushas Shevi'is. Last time we spoke about some of the rules. Today we're going to talk about two groups of items. And the first thing is herbs and flowers. Okay, and as like this. The Mishnah is at the end of the 7th parak of Shevi'is, mention that there's Kedushas Shevi'is on roses. Okay? And it's understood to mean that the reason why there's Kedushas Shevi'is on roses is because roses are used in making food. They're used in something called rose water. The people who make tea out of the leaves. Excuse me? Candy. They candy the leaves also, that's correct. Yes, I forgot about that.
No, use it as flavoring candy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, correct. Yeah, they put with sugar on it. I'm asking. Okay, now, that's what the Mishnah says. And it's assumed that the Yisham talks about it lots of times, talks about that there's Kedushas Shevi'is on roses. It's very questionable whether that din of the Mishnah is still true nowadays, punked on roses. I mean, it's true what the din of the Mishnah says, whether it actually applies to roses is a question.
What's the Mishnah?
The Mishnah just lists it. It just says it.
What's the even?
No, I think they're varied. So yeah, it's more than one time. So the thing is like this. I can't tell you about what was going on then, but nowadays like this. Nowadays, the people who use roses for those kind of uses that I just said to you, for making rose water and all kinds of things like that, use a specific type of rose, a certain breed of rose called Rosa Damaskina, okay, or Damascus rose if you're American, okay, Rosa Damaskina, that's what they call it. What did you say? Or Latin, well, whatever it is. I don't know, it's called Damascus rose in English. That's what it is, Damask rose, or Rose of Castile, okay? And the truth is that other roses are not used. The roses that we see, okay, no, I'm sorry, take that back. There's another thing. There's another thing from roses that people use, which is not from the flower, which is called rose hips. That's the picture over there of rose hips. People use it for making vitamin C and for other purposes. Actually, when the Gemara talks about roses having all kinds of different parts to them, and each one has its own status. They don't have the same status. Just because one part has Kedushas Shevi'is doesn't mean the other part. The Gemara is very involved with all the different parts of the roses, of which I don't know what all those parts mean. But anyway, there's all different kinds of parts.
These develop into the flower?
I think it goes separately on the tree. It's not the leaf. It's a separate piece that goes like a fruit. The bush, whatever it is. I think that it's a fruit that grows. That's like a fruit.
I have my front lawn. I want to back here.
Okay, now But there are all the regular kind of roses that we see. Now, I'm not such an expert to be able to tell you which one is or is not exactly what we're supposed to have. But there's a very, very specific type. This Rosa Damaskina is a very specific type that people use when they're trying to make all these food products. And the roses that we buy are not the same roses. And to say it from a different angle, it's a very similar point, but to say it from a different angle is, the Gemara says also that if an item that grows in the ground has more than one use, some is used for food items, things that need Kedushas Shevi'is, some that are not, that it depends why you picked it. Okay, there are some foods, if it's just the right way, it depends on why you picked it. If you had this kavan or that kavan. That is to say, not why you planted it, why you picked it. So the people who are picking roses to sell in the forest are not the same people. Their kavan is to sell these roses in the forest. That's what they're meant for. So even if you don't want to say that a rose damaskina is so much different than any of the other roses on the left side, they're basically, you want to say they're all basically all roses, but it will at least be qualified for us to say is that it depends on why you picked it. And depending on why you picked it, I don't know, but I would guess that the people picking for florists are not the same people who are picking to make rose water and
all the roses that are good they sell.
So really, that's not what they do. Really, they pick. There's a very specific type that they grow just for making these items. Other ones not. But even if you want to say, well, they're all the same in that case, when they're all the same, the guys who are growing them in California have this kavan, and the guys growing it in Mexico have a different kavan. The people going to your forest, I suspect, are going just to your forest. I don't know, but that's what I suspect. So let us say that it's not clear whether roses that the Mishnah says have Kedushas Shevi'is really have Kedushas Shevi'is. But at the same time, whether the rose punk does or doesn't have Kedushas Shevi'is is not so important to us. That's not dafka what's important to us. What's important to us is that the Mishnah is saying that thing has Kedushas Shevi'is, and based on that, and something I'm going to tell you in a second, we come out that there are 4 different categories of these types of foods, of what I call herbs and flowers. And the first is what the Mishnah calls a rose. Okay, whether it means a rose, whether in the Negei Fest is not so important, which is it's something that's edible, something that you take this flowery, growing piece of leaf. Okay, that's edible. For us, the best example for us are herbs. Okay, if I have parsley or rosemary, basically a piece of wood. I mean, basically just a plant that's growing. It's not like an apple. It's not like the fruit or something. It's actually like the grass itself. But it has a value that you use in food. You take the parsley and you cook it in your soup. But you cook the food itself. You cook it and you use it as a food item. The Mishnah is saying for sure have Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay, those for sure have Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay, and that's what the Mishnah is saying, that those have Kedushas Shevi'is. It happens to be. It's worth keeping in mind. Eretz Yisrael is a big exporter of herbs. So this is very negay. So this question of whether that herbs have Kedushas Shevi'is based on the Mishnah. The Mishnah is not talking about herbs, but based on the Mishnah is very lamaisa.
Is that a chiddush? The herbs are.
I guess it's a chiddush. I'm breaking your things into 4 categories. The source for it is from this Mishnah. Okay. Next, the next one is what's most discussed is Yerushalmi has a suffix whether it's Kedushas Shevi'is on besamim. Okay, what does besamim means? The way I'm about to explain to you is the way the Kashrus says it's pretty accepted, which is the case in besamim means is something that grows in the ground. You don't eat it. It's not like a herb that you're going to take it and mamish put it into your food, but you specifically want to cut it off the ground because you want to smell it. Okay, because you specifically want for its fragrance, like the way we use with besamim, like a Matzah Shabbos. In the flowers, they tell me hadas and myrtle branches. People walk in and doctor just buy them just for fragrance. Okay, Yerushalmi has a suffix whether those things do or do not have Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay, I'm going to explain to you in a minute. We're going to come up in a minute. I'll show you on the screen what the shaila is. What's the suffix of the Yerushalmi about that? But that's the shaila. Whether something that has specific you want it for fragrance, it has Kedushas Shevi'is. Now, I've been, if I can use the word, negotiating, or discussing with the people in Eretz Yisrael which flowers they think fit into this, and I have a whole chart from them, a very worthwhile bunch of charts about Shemittah from people in Eretz Yisrael, and in it has a whole section on flowers, and as it stands now, I can't say that I'm getting it. I have a feeling that the Hebrew is messing it up a little bit. You know, my Hebrew and their English is messing this up a little bit, but they so far are saying to me is they don't think there's any flowers that anybody buys for their fragrance. Okay, that's the way they're presenting it, and their list of flowers is for something else, nothing to do with it, nothing to do with this thing.
And therefore,
they think there are no flowers that qualify for this second step, the second category, which is something sold specifically for flavor. Now, that's what they said to me. For fragrance. That's what they said to me. That's not what the florist told me here. Okay? The florist told me here that there are plenty of flowers that are sold specifically for fragrance.
That's the looks.
Right, it's supposed to just because you like how pretty they are. I know that they're pretty. That's not what we're talking about. Question, but when people walk into the store, the doctors say, "Oh, I like this one, not just because it's bright yellow, because it's fuchsia, because I want it because of the fragrance. I'm looking for the fragrance."
If they want the fragrance, they're going to put some ugly thing there, put something next to make the fragrance.
Right. It's
sort of the breeze.
So these ones that we have here, stock fuchsia and orchids. There's a few other ones. I don't know if I pronounce this right. A few. So there's
orchids are not for fragrance.
Orchids. It's past orchids.
Orchids is in South America.
Okay, now I have to tell you something. Where are we? I have to say that you should know, the florist told me also here that not only do people buy them here for fragrance, she said is when I went to Eretz Yisrael, you can imagine if you're a florist and you go to Eretz Yisrael, you stop at flower shops, you know, that's like just, it's like, you can't control yourself. So she walked into,
where do you stop? Different Kashrus.
So she walked in, and she said she couldn't believe that Eretz Yisrael. She said, "Mom, toiva haaretz ma'od." She used those words. She said the flowers of Eretz Yisrael have so much better fragrance than they do here in America. She said, and the truth is that in America, flowers. Eretz Yisrael is the big exporter of flowers. Also, that's another thing. Aside from herbs, they export a lot of flowers. You don't see those flowers in a cheap flower store. Okay, so that is to say, is depending on how much you spend on flowers. If you go to Jewel, you're not going to see flowers from Eretz Yisrael because they're a higher quality and they're more expensive. And so the florist told me, yes, people buy flowers for fragrance. These are a few examples. And when you smell them in the store, I mean, each of these I smelled, and they really have a strong fragrance. She said people have to buy them for that. And the ones in Eretz Yisrael have even more so. What she's selling from Canada, from California, Mexico, has a certain amount. The Eretz Yisrael ones are even more so. I don't know what to say. The people in Eretz Yisrael said to me, "Nah, nobody buys anything just for fragrance." Maybe
can't afford it.
Maybe, well, they live in Eretz Yisrael.
Well, they're sure.
Maybe they can't.
And that's why.
Right, maybe they can't.
Maybe it's just a cultural thing.
Cultural, and they're the cultural that they don't buy it they can't afford it, or cultural that they don't like the flour, they don't like the smell.
Or they don't use flowers for
They use cigarettes for fragrance.
There you go.
Okay.
Are there perfumes made from...
Yes. So a perfume that's made from it would be part of this. Then also, yeah, that would be, but we're a little away from that. I don't know if that comes from Eretz Yisrael. I have no idea. Okay. Now I'm going to go to two other categories, and then I'm going to go back to this Yerushalmi, what the suffix of the Yerushalmi was. Okay, so the Chazon Ish says you should be machmir about this suffix. Okay? This suffix about something that's sold specifically for fragrance, it's a suffix in Yerushalmi, and the Chazon Ish says you should be machmir about that suffix. Even though it's Rabbanan, he says because it's started from the Raisa, he says you should be machmir about the suffix. Okay, and it's pretty accepted that people are machmir about this case. So the first category was things that you don't just have for incidental fragrance, just watch the wire, but you care about them, you're going to actually eat them, they're going to be part of your food. And the second category is ones that you sell dafka for the fragrance. The third one is things that have an incidental fragrance. They have an incidental fragrance. And that means, things that have an incidental fragrance means most flowers that you buy, okay, most flowers happen to have a fragrance in them, but you're not buying them because you want the fragrance. You're buying them because you like how pretty they are. Okay, but it's not because of the fragrance. The fragrance is incidental. Shemittah was very clear that those things do not have Kedushas Shevi'is in them. That's not the suffix of Yerushalmi. The suffix of Yerushalmi was things that are dafka for fragrance. Rabbi Yashiv, I've seen a few different things from him, and each one it says, even though it said last time that I said mutter, now I said usher. I said it was usher, now I said mutter. So it really was very unclear. It seems that his final decision was that it's mutter. Okay, but you can, every day I find a new one that says, no, when I said yesterday there was mutter. So it's really not clear. It's not him. It's Talmidim writing over what he said, and it's a little fuzzy as to what his final position was, but most people assume, like Rosh Zalman, we'll call it like Rosh Zalman, that things that are meant that incidentally have fragrance, do not have Kedushas Shevi'is at all, not even the suffix in Yerushalmi, and that's most flowers. Most flowers that you're going to buy are going to fit into that category, and the last is ones that have zero fragrance at all. Now, they don't have incidental fragrance, they're just totally for their looks, they're just partial, everybody agrees that there's no Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay. So now, what's the suffix of the Yerushalmi? So we had our four categories of herbs and flowers. What was the suffix of the Yerushalmi where the flowers that are meant for fragrance do or don't have Kedushas Shevi'is? And this is going to be a reminder of what we spoke about last time. Okay, so the answer is there's a pirush on the Yerushalmi called Rash Siriliyoi, and the Rash Siriliyoi has in it, if you look at the pirush, it's in most versions of the Yerushalmi it's not there. In the whole pirush it doesn't exist, but it is in other versions. When you read this pirush, you see that, we wouldn't see it. If you read it, you find out that somebody changed lots of parts of the Rash Siriliyoi. And nobody knows whether the person who changed it was authentic, it was really the Rash Siriliyoi telling them to change it, or was just some other guy who just decided to change it. Okay? So in the periods of the Rash Siriliyoi that you see in most places, you see it all according to the new version. Okay? In the newer Oiz V'Hadar Yerushalmis, it has it broken apart. They said there's the original version and what they call the British Museum version, and they put them in the different types of brackets so you can tell which is which. So in this place where I'm about to show you Yerushalmi, is two completely different pirushim. One the original and one the new version. Okay, and nobody really knows whether the new version is really written by him. Everybody knows that. In most printed copies, you see only the new version. And the other people tell you, if you look, it was all done in this version that's in the British Museum, but it's not clear at all whether it's authentic or not authentic. Are we seeing really what he said, or was it somebody else who just decided he had his own thoughts about what the Rash Siriliyoi should have been? What he should have meant to say. Okay, and you'll see it very clearly in what we'll say like this. Okay, and it's like this. Okay, now.
Which one's the older manuscript? Sorry.
What?
One based on manuscript.
They're both manuscript. But if you buy the printed version, most printed version of Yerushalmi, you're going to see the new version only.
The new version is based on the museum copy?
Yes. But other people said, wait a second, there was an original and a new version, and when they print Yerushalmi, they distinguish between what's old and what's new. You can see it you can see it side by side, but you can see old and new. It didn't come out the way it was supposed to. The screen's not working the way it's supposed to today. Sorry. Okay. Playing on the screen, right? Okay, my graphics is not working perfectly. That's true. Okay, and Yerushalmi is like this. Let's look first at the original. These were supposed to come up one at a time, not to confuse you. Okay, the Yerushalmi is talking about like this. Yerushalmi is in the middle of this suffix, whether Besamim have Kedushas Shevi'is, so they don't have Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay? It's in the middle of the suffix. And the Yerushalmi thinks it has a raya from a certain case that it does have Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay? So we're in a tzad to think that it has Kedushas Shevi'is. Let's look at the original verse. The Yerushalmi says, V'taima, the reason why it has Kedushas Shevi'is, that Achilas Adam, Achilas Behema, Tzriva Halacha, those are all the things that are, the Mishnah says have Kedushas Shevi'is, Achilas Adam, Achilas Behema, for dying and for burning, all those are the Havidav Shava L'chol Nefesh, L'kol Hu D'chsiva. Those are the ones that are written, are the ones that are Shava L'chol Nefesh. That's why they have Kedushas Shevi'is. Tfeilai, like we saw last time, that there's a rule that only things that are Shava L'chol Nefesh have Kedushas Shevi'is. So Achila, excuse me?
It's okay.
Shavuot, I'm sorry. Shavuot. These are things that are Shavuot. And like we said last time, there's such a rule that it has to be Shavuot, and therefore that's what these are. And then he finishes off with Kvisa, the Hispek Kedushas Shevi'is, shiny. So things they're doing for laundry water, that have it, the Chiyas Chashiva K'may Chila, that is considered that it's Shavuot, because everyone needs to do laundry. Okay, that's a side point. So he's saying is, the Yerushalmi is coming right from this case that we were talking about, that Besamim are considered Shavuot Kol. Well, I'm sorry, the suffix of the Yerushalmi is whether Besamim are Shavuot Kol or not Shavuot Kol, which many of you may be familiar with. In Hilchos Yom Tov, there's also a rule of Shavuot L'chol Nefesh. You can only do malachas which are Shavuot L'chol Nefesh. And also the Gemara says, burning Besamim, here it's using Besamim, but it's similar. Burning Besamim is something that's not Shavuot L'chol Nefesh, because not everybody appreciates burning Besamim. This is not exactly that. It's similar. But the question is the benefit that people have from fragrant flowers is that Shavuot Kol, so not Shavuot Kol. That's the suffix of the Yerushalmi. That's the original. In the new version, it says, the time of the Achilas Adam Achilas Behem Tzira Hadlaka, that's the same as the original. The Havidami La'achila, the Haniyasa Ubiyur Shava, Av Bareach B'Shas Haniyasa Lekabir Loy. And what it means is like, and then, read the last part. What he said is, that the reason, what's special about these things is, that they're not Haniyasa Ubiyur Shava, and the Kedushas Shevi'is, Shayin B'Chilas Chashiva, V'Haniyu Bu'ur Ika Ka'achas K'may Achila. So now, the way it's explained is like this. What he means to say is like this. Why should it not be Hanas B'Ur and Shava? So you'll remember, I told you there's a rule. The Gemara says that just like Achila, you destroy it at the same time that you have the benefit from it, so too, only things that you have benefited from when you destroy it have Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay? There are two ways to understand what that rule means. Does that rule mean is, you must have the Hana and the beer at the same time, just like by Achila, you have them both at the same time. So, if the beer happens if the Hana happens after the beer, like the Gemara's case, when you burn firewood, you burn it first, and then the heat from it, that after it's destroyed, then you have the Hana from it afterwards. So, if that case does not have Kedushas Shevi'is, and so too flowers, where the Hana happens before the beer, when you benefit from a flower, you smell it, you're not destroying it. It's not like when you eat an apple, the eating and the benefit happen at the same time. But when you smell a flower, the Hana happens before the beer. So it's not like Achila. Achila, the Hana and the beer happen at the same time. But burning wood or having flowers are not having Hana and beer at the same time. One's before, one's after, but it's not at the same time. That's one side. The other side of the Yerushalmi is that the only reason why firewood doesn't have Kedushas Shevi'is is not because they're not simultaneous. It's because the Hana happens after the whole product is destroyed. If it happens after it's destroyed, well then you never have Hana from the Shemittah product. The piece of wood, you never have Hana from it. It's only when it's not a piece of wood anymore, then you have Hana from it. But what would happen if you'd have the Hana before the beer, like by a flower, that don't happen before the beer, you're having Hana from the Shemittah product, then it does have Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay? So the second side, this newer version's shot is, it's trying to tell us, what does it mean that you have to have a Hana B'Ur Shava? Does it have to be simultaneous, or does it just mean you have to have the Hana before the beer?
In the newer version, why do you have to explain Kvisa, like in the first version, in the Kaddish Kvisa is considered Chiyas, and they said it's a Chiddush beyond. Mm-hmm. It's beyond. In the second Pshat, Kvisa fits right with the other ones.
Because?
Because it's on your Yikok Achas.
Because it's a question. I don't want to talk about Kvisa. It's a question. Kvisa is not Hana B'Ur Shava. Okay, it's a question whether it is or is not. Whether you have the benefit when you destroy it or not. I'd rather not talk about it now. Okay, but the chiddush of the left side of the newer version is, the chiddush of that side is that when we said that the rules has to be Hana B'Ur Shava, does that mean that they mamish have to be simultaneous like when you eat it? Or does it just mean is the Hana has to happen before the beer? In other words, before you lose the product, before it became something else, like in the wood it got burnt up, but if you had Hana beforehand, then maybe that would not be a problem. Anyhow,
Something end up by a chila even without destroying it. When you take a first bite in it, you're getting the hana of the tam.
Yeah.
It's still bad.
the piece that you're eating, that you're
It's not
enjoying,
destroyed yet.
you're chewing it up. Yeah,
Well,
you're chewing it up. It's
Yeah,
gone.
It's still here. The Gemara discusses,
Piece
if
that's
I'm
in
not
your
mistaken, when you swallow something and it comes back up,
Okay.
that it's
Okay, so the answer is
Okay.
the answer is things that you eat for sure have Kedushas Shevi'is. So that little difference is not important. When the Gemara says it has to be Hanok B'Yoshav, it has to be roughly at the same time. Roughly in the same time.
You're not doing it?
Is there enough Gemina? What the pshat is? Well, the nafkamina is just going to be, well, if you think one of them is right, well, how do you get to the other one? Let's say you think that the soft of the Yisham is the Shavuot HaKol. What's the din about Hanav Yerushavah when the Hanav is before the beer, or the other way around? Okay, so the Chazon Ish, I forgot to say, the Chazon Ish says like the original version. He doesn't bring the Rosh Hashanah that I remember. He just says like the original version, and everybody wonders, well, why does he say the original version? But the Rosh Hashanah says the other version says this. He said the Shavuot is about whether it's Shavuot HaKol. I said really? But the Rosh Hashanah says it's Hanav Yerushavah. The Chazon, there are rayas that it might be Hanav, that having Hanav before the beer counts. Okay, it could be, there are rayas that it might be good enough to have Hanav before the beer also. And the answer is because it might not be the Rosh Hashanah. It's very debatable whether he really wrote that. Okay. Our other thing we need to talk about is, okay, we finished talking about all the things that do or don't have Kedushas Shevi'is. What happens when you have something that has Kedushas Shevi'is and it's the taruvas or has bliyas from that into something else? Okay. Does that make a difference? Does the dinim of Kedushas Shevi'is transfer through a taruvas or into a bliya? Do those transfer? So I'm going to give you the rules that they're a little bit complicated. Not like what you would have necessarily would have expected. Well, not what I would have expected. Okay. So the thing is like this. There's a few cases. The first like this. Let's say we have two foods that both have Kedushas Shevi'is. In my example, I'm going to use, I know this sounds strange, dates and grapes. I'm using them because both of them we know when the time of beer for them is. Okay. Dates, the time of beer is Purim, and grapes, it's Pesach. Okay. So for our discussion, we need things that we know when the time of beer is. So a person cooked dates and grapes both with Kedushas Shevi'is to them. He cooked them together. So the din is, even though the grapes have a bliya of dates in them, doesn't make a difference. When the time for beer of dates comes, you mavire the dates. When the time of beer for the grapes comes, you mavire the grapes. Even though the grapes have absorbed time from the dates, and that time theoretically should need beer earlier, it's not true. The fact that even though they were belayed from one another, the dates have the beer at Purim, and the grapes have the beer at Pesach. Okay?
Even after the Sukkah or according to Sukkah?
It's even... I'm going to talk about that in a second, I think. Okay. What happens if... What happens if that's all true, but only if the two things both had Kedushas Shevi'is? What happens if the dates gave time into grapes that were not from Shemittah? They were from a different year. Okay, what happens if they were cooked with something else? Then the din is, the not Shemitah food needs beer at whatever time the Shemitah food did. So
One second, let's start. Has Kedushas Shevi'is? Is that the olive?
we're going to get to Kedushas Shevi'is in 1 second. Whether it has Kedushas Shevi'is, because they're separate. Because they're two different directions. You'll hear in a second. I'm going to talk about Kedushas Shevi'is in 1 second. But as far as the beer part of it, when the dates need beer at Purim, if I cook those dates with anything else that was not Kedushas Shevi'is, it also needs beer at Purim. It has a bliya of something that needs Kedushas Shevi'is, and it needs Kedushas Shevi'is at the time that the dates did. Even though, when it was cooked with Shemitah fruit, it does not need beer. What happens if it's... What about what Yossi said about whether it has Kedushas Shevi'is or not? Whether it has Kedushas Shevi'is or not? So the Rambam says, not in Hilchos Shemitah, this is in Hilchos Machalos Asuros, the Rambam says that if you cook Shemitah produce with anything else, if it's min b'minoi, then it has Kedushas Shevi'is even b'mashu. Why? He says it's davar sheyesh lo matirin. Because having Kedushas Shevi'is is something, the food is mutter, you just have to eat it the right way. He says, so, it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin, and it's b'mashu. It doesn't make a difference, no matter how little there is in there, if it's min b'minoi for davar sheyesh lo matirin, it's not batal at all, and it's going to have Kedushas Shevi'is. Our question of beer is not a question that does not relate to this thing, it's a different child. Because beer means it's going to become usher at a certain point. So, using it beheter. Davar sheyesh lo matirin, the Gemara says, why eat it beheter by eating it beheter?
But not the whatever is heter is heter. Whatever is isn't never changes. The heter never changes.
So, but now we have...
When the Isser becomes heter.
The heter became Isser.
When the Isser becomes heter, it's also now in this form, in that thing that was awesome becomes mutter. Something that's always awesome one way, always mutter the other way. That's not
It's like truma. It's like truma that...
Okay, wait, I'm trying to do this again. Say it again.
What the God just said was the thing we just had it. We have a chatos with chatos tahiris.
Okay.
So Kohen was always Kohen was always mutter, but it's always awesome.
Okay.
That's not the Rosh Hashanah material. It's starting to give it to Kohen. That's not the Rosh Hashanah material.
Okay. So I don't know the answer to that. I can't answer the question. I know the Rambam says.
We just had this going about truma.
Yeah, let's go.
I keep telling her.
Okay.
I think Gemara was a hobby and the Gemara slugged it up that way.
I can't.
Twice it said it.
I can't. I don't know the answer to the question. I don't know what to tell you. So Rambam says that it's considered Darav Sheish material. So you're saying to me it's not Darav Sheish material because...
Again, you haven't changed it.
Okay, I don't know. It might be different. It might be different. Yes. David. David. It might be different here.
Like Kaddish.
David. It might be different over here because here there's a aliyah of the Shemittah stuff into the non-Shemittah stuff. So it's not two separate things. The Shemittah stuff is mixed into here also.
Yeah.
It's mixed in. I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to the question. What do you want to say there? That what?
I forget. I don't remember.
Okay.
What's got to do with the
All that in the minute. The all that in the minute.
Hours.
Yeah, but if right, maybe I make a mistake. All that minute. But if it's mimbish enimina, then it goes by the rules of bittul. So it has to have shishim. If it's not in time or v'daris in time, then that's what. Okay. Now, what's the reason why when you have two things, the date and the grape that both have Kedushas Shevi'is mixed together, we say that you don't have to follow the early time of year. But when we had the Shemitah stuff and the not Shemitah stuff, then you needed Shishim to connect it. What's the reason for that? What's the difference between the two cases? If either you should care about the Bli or you should not care about the Bli.
That's the Rosh material.
What's the addition with it?
They have different dates.
They have different dates. What? Can I eat by the earlier date? I can eat by the earlier time? Well, here, what's I can eat by the earlier time? I can do the same thing. So he says, so Chaim Kasky says, I'm sure he's saying it from somebody, but that's where I saw it. He says, the difference is like this. When I have two things that both have Kedushas Shevi'is mixed together, okay, from today's perspective, those two things are equal. They both have the exact same din. They're both allowed to be eaten. You have to eat them with Kedushas Shevi'is. And one day they're going to have a din of beer. But basically they're equals. So when the blia from one goes into the other one, it's not a taruvas of Isser and Heter. They're both equal. They're of equal status. So that we as if ignore the blia that's going across from one to the other because they're of equal standing. Now, in 6 months from now, it's going to make a difference were you a date or were you a grape. But basically, they're equal things, and the blia makes no difference. But when in the case when I'm putting the Shemitah stuff with non-Shemitah stuff, then it's Isser going into Heter. Because this has rules of Kedushas Shevi'is and this one does not. So when the blia goes from one to the other, it's making a difference that it's coming from there to there. But and therefore the blia goes across and causes it to have din of Kedushas Shevi'is and din of beer. But when it had from Shemitah to Shemitah, that makes no difference. They're equals and there's no blias. Okay, to me, I was a little confused by that. I have to tell you, I was a little confused by that because usually we say it the other way around. We usually say the rules of bittul don't apply when heter mixes into heter. But okay, that's what he says. Now. What happens if? So he therefore says, he answers of the question, which is, what happens if the taruvas happen after the time of beer passed? So that, in other words, it's already after Purim, and you cook the dates and the grapes together. Now the dates have a different status than the grapes do, and therefore the dates would make the grapes usher, even though they're Shemitah into Shemitah. Because it's only when they're the equals into each other that they don't make a blia. Here, where the dates are already Isser, because they passed the time of beer and you didn't do beer, then now it could give a time to the other food, and it does affect the other food. Okay, one last question. What happens if you cooked our dates in a pot, and nothing, you ate up all the food, it's gone. Okay. Now comes Purim, and there's the chiv of beer on the dates. The dates are actually gone. You've eaten them up months ago. Are you mechuyev to kasher that pot? The pot has blias of Shemitah produce in it. It's the time of beer for those dates. So are you mechuyev to kasher the pot now before you use it? Because it has a blia of something that is usher. Dates would be usher now because if you didn't do beer, you'd be usher now. Okay? So the... What did you say? He does, but why do you think he would say that? Just because he's a nice guy. What do you think that?
The second reason is because it's a din beer. It's not an ism. That's
Okay, and therefore,
like they said by listen, we had it by Meister Sheni. By Meister, right?
then what?
In the Blias don't ask it. Meister Sheni. You have to do Meister Pidyon.
Okay.
It's not Meister Sheni.
He said something very similar. You're right. Very good. Anyhow, but so the first. We talked about Blias for the most. I don't remember. You might be right. Oh, yeah, it sounds vaguely familiar. Okay, so over here the Rosh Hashanah again comes in and he says, yes, you have kashrus. Why not? Of course you have to kashrus. He even says that if it be klicheres, it would be no good. You have to break it. Okay, it comes out a funny thing according to the Rosh Hashanah is that you're going to have to keep track of your pots. You have to mark my pot. Every time I cook something in it that has Kedushas Shevi'is, I have to mark it down. Okay, today I cook potatoes, and tomorrow I cook onions, and the next day I cook this thing, and then keep track of when it needs to be kasher, because come the time of beer for each of those things, you're going to be kashering them. And then, once you kasher it, you're done, and I'll start a new record of all the foods that are in there, and kasher it again, and
what about the bleeds in the water?
In which order?
What are you kashering?
To get the bleeds out. Get the bleeds out.
So now where are the bleeds?
In the water.
So why are you worried about the bleeds in the water?
Every time we kasher, that's a good question, but we do it every time we kasher. Every time we kasher.
Now, logically, if I didn't kasher it at the end of the day, it's not going to answer the food that I cooked in there?
Correct.
Okay.
So actually, it's a good point. Actually, it's a good...
It starts off as a Bli Shaheter.
Yes.
So there's not for now.
That's correct also. Yes, it starts with that. Well, time I'm kashering it, it's Isser now.
No, but if you
kasher early,
cook anything in it,
earlier, yes, that's true.
You don't leave any beginning. You can do Ben
Right.
You can do Ben Yaim. No, you don't do Ben Yaim if you kasher it before. If you kasher it before the time of beer, right? He's not doing kashering before. He's thinking you're kashering it after the time of beer. Okay. That's actually an interesting point because when he said that there are those who say when there's something that
here it's all you're only talking about. Are you talking about the dates or
the dates? I cook dates in a pot by itself. I just cooked it.
Oh, okay.
So there's no grapes anymore. So actually, I didn't think this before, but there are those who say that the only reason why I'm kashering this kli, the only kashering the kli is because there ain't a binyan but the binyan. There are those who say that only applies when it could at least be usher when it was a binyan. But if I cook dates today and they're not going to have a time of beer until Purim, so maybe I'm not going to kasher because it can never be usher when it's a binyan. Because within the next 24 hours, it's not going to be Purim. So these grapes are never going to be, these blias are never going to be usher with the raisa. If I cook in the next 24 hours, it's before Purim. If I cook after 24 hours, it'll be in the binyamin. Maybe there's no zera in the binyamin to binyamin for this.
Cook right before the sun.
So if I cook the dates on Tainis Esther, then I have a problem. Okay, so maybe. Okay, anyhow. So,
if you cook it every day, so you chayav the
no, those are chanan kind of. You wouldn't say chanan tefter. It would not be a problem. Okay, I'm not sure what this is, but let me just tell you what the Stipler says and Rosh Hashanah. They both say it's not true. They say, come on, anybody ever hear this beforehand? Anybody hear that you employ the kasher kalim when it comes to time of beer? No one ever heard of such a din, except for the Rosh Hashanah, but no one ever heard of such a din that he starts to kasher kalim. He said, nah, you're not mechuyev to. Doesn't bring it down. No, does not bring it down to the Gemara. No one says it. I guess you could say, well, if it's Isser, of course you have to kasher. But the Stipler says like this. He says the din is that if a person, the Rambam says that if a person has a pot of food and the food is going to be chayv in beer, but he's already started eating from that pot, not mechuyev to do beer on the rest of it. Why? It's sort of like beer means you make it available for people to eat. Don't hoard it for yourself, but make it available. Don't take more than so to speak you need for yourself. This food is about to be eaten anyhow, so it's sort of like that's okay. You can keep this like keeping muzzin shoulders. Do this. You can keep what you have. You can finish eating it. So if you started eating it, then you're not mechuyev to do beer. So the Stipler says, well, guess what? If I have a bli in a pot, that means I started to eat from it because I already cooked it, and the food that's in the pot, presumably I ate already. So it's as if I started to eat from the food, so the part that I left behind in the pot, that's just the end of the food. If it had been a pot of food, I don't have to do beer on the whole pot. So as soon as I started eating it, I don't have to do beer for the rest. So the part that's left behind is like the leftovers of the pot, and I don't have to do beer on that. Okay, Rosh Hashanah says, the mitzvah of beer is to take the food and not keep it for yourself, but make sure that everybody can have from it. So you take a little bit for yourself and everybody else can have from it. He says that whole mitzvah only applies for foods that are accessible. If you have a food that's locked up, absorbed into the walls of a pot, then the whole mitzvah of beer wouldn't apply to that food. The mitzvah beer is to say, let everybody have it. Come on and take it. Well, nobody can take it anyhow. You can't pull it out of the pot anyhow. So the whole mitzvah beer doesn't even start on that kind of a food. It doesn't even get started like that because it's not fit even at all to like that. Okay. One last point. We talked about it when we looked about Chalav Yisrael, that it could be there are those who hold that there's no tam ki'ikar on things that are only mitzvah say. Okay, there is tamu mamasha, but there's no tam ki'ikar on things that are only a chiyav asay on an isra asay on a food, which could be another answer over here. Okay, because over here the chiyav of beer is an asay, so it could be that there's no tamu mamasha. I'm sorry, there is tamu mamasha. There's no tam ki'ikar, in which case there's no chiyav of hagol. Hagol is because of tam ki'ikar. Okay, pass on that.